David Reynolds seemed to have it all: wealth, success, and the lifestyle many dreamed of. His days were filled with meetings, deadlines, and a constant race to climb even higher. Yet each morning, as he waited at the crowded New York City subway station, he couldn't ignore the emptiness he saw in his own reflection on the train window. Despite the noise and chaos around him, he felt disconnected, like a spectator in his own life. One chilly morning, something shifted. Amid the rush of suits and footsteps, a soft sound broke through the blur: a child's laughter. He turned to see a young girl sitting on the floor with her younger brother. Her clothes were worn, her shoes clearly too small, but her smile was wide and genuine. She tore her sandwich in half and handed it to her brother, laughing at something he said. Their joy was simple, pure, and real. David stood there, confused and strangely moved. These children had so little, and yet they radiated something he couldn't remember the last time he felt: happiness. It didn't come from luxury or achievement. It came from a moment shared, from love and connection. In that instant, David realized something was missing in his life, something no paycheck or promotion could fill. The hollow feeling in his chest wasn't about what he didn't have, it was about what he had lost. That brief encounter stayed with him, like a quiet whisper in his mind, asking questions he'd long avoided. How could these kids, living with so little, seem so full of life? And how had he, with everything, become so empty? As the train arrived and he stepped inside, one thing was clear: something inside him had begun to change. The next morning, David couldn't stop thinking about the children. Something about their joy, their bond, lingered in his mind. So he returned to the same subway station, hoping to see them again. There they were, huddled in the same corner, sharing a bag of chips like it was a feast. He hesitated, then walked over. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. The boy, maybe 8 years old, gave a small shrug. "Gone. We have each other." David's heart sank. Without saying much more, he reached into his wallet and handed them a $20 bill. The girl took it politely but smiled and said, "Thank you, mister. But can you sit with us instead?" Her voice was soft, but sure, inviting, not asking. Surprised, David sat down beside them on the cold floor. At first, he didn't know what to say. But the children talked freely. They told him about the colors they liked, about how the girl wanted to draw her own book one day, and how the boy dreamed of a house with a tree just for climbing. They giggled at their own silly stories, and eventually, David found himself laughing too. Not politely. Not out of habit. But genuinely. Freely. Time slowed down. The rushing crowd blurred around them. In that simple, imperfect moment, David felt something unfamiliar: peace. He wasn't fixing anything. He wasn't impressing anyone. He was just present. And that presence, that shared humanity, felt more fulfilling than anything he'd experienced in years. As he got up to leave, he realized the children hadn't taken anything from him, they'd given him something he hadn't known he'd lost: a reason to smile. That night, alone in his apartment high above the city, David couldn't sleep. The laughter of the children echoed in his mind, so pure, so effortless. He wandered through the silence of his living room and opened an old cabinet he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a dusty photo album, its leather cover faded, corners worn. He sat down and flipped it open. There, frozen in time, was a picture of him as a child, barefoot in a field, hand in hand with his little sister. They were both laughing, caught mid-giggle, sun in their eyes. A lump formed in his throat. His sister, Emily, had died when she was just 10. A car accident. A day that changed everything. After that, joy became something dangerous, something he quietly packed away with the photo albums and the crayons they used to share. He had buried that version of himself, the one who found magic in dandelions and made wishes on stars. He buried it beneath ambition, beneath deadlines, beneath the chase for status and safety. But now, after just one conversation on a subway floor, that forgotten version of himself had started to stir. Tears blurred his eyes. He realized something painfully simple: those children, with nothing but each other, still carried what he had long abandoned: wonder, playfulness, joy in the smallest things. It wasn't about wealth or security. It was about presence. About love. About seeing beauty where others saw struggle. David closed the album, cradling it like a fragile piece of himself. For the first time in years, he let himself mourn. Not just his sister, but the part of him that had died with her. And in that morning, something else quietly bloomed, the first flicker of healing. The next morning, the air had turned colder, sharper. David walked into the subway station, not with a briefcase this time, but with 2 small backpacks slung over his shoulder and a bag of food in his hand. He found the children in their usual spot, huddled together for warmth, still smiling despite the chill. As he approached, their faces lit up. He knelt beside them and handed them the food: warm sandwiches, fresh fruit, hot cocoa in thermoses. Then he opened the backpacks. Inside were books, gloves, scarves, and a journal for each of them. "So you can write your stories," he told the girl. Her eyes welled up as she threw her arms around him. "We never had a friend like you." David hugged her back, overwhelmed. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. "I think I'm the one who needed a friend." But he didn't stop there. David spent the next few days making calls, pulling strings, and using his connections to find a safe shelter that would take them in together. He worked quietly, without fanfare, making sure they were fed, cared for, and eventually enrolled in a nearby public school. The day he watched them walk through the school gates, holding new backpacks and wearing clean clothes, he felt something shift inside him. Not pride. Not relief. Something deeper. It was a kind of joy that money had never brought him. A quiet, glowing peace. He didn't need applause. The look on their faces, their hope, their excitement, was more valuable than any promotion or bonus he'd ever earned. For the first time in years, David felt rich in the only way that mattered. The trees swayed gently in the spring breeze, their leaves a vibrant green. Laughter echoed through the park as children ran across the grass, chasing bubbles and dreams. David sat on a worn wooden bench, watching the 2 familiar figures. Now cleaner, healthier, brighter, racing each other with carefree joy. A woman pushing a stroller paused beside him. "Are they yours?" she asked with a warm smile. David looked at the children, then back at her. "In a way," he replied, his voice soft, eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "They taught me something I forgot long ago." She tilted her head. "What's that?" He looked up at the clear blue sky, as if the answer had always been waiting there. Then he turned to her with a gentle smile. "That happiness isn't found in having more, it's found in giving more." She nodded, moved by his words. As she walked away, David leaned back on the bench, letting the sunlight warm his face. The emptiness that once clung to his soul had melted away, replaced by something richer. Not the fleeting buzz of achievement or wealth, but a deeper, quieter joy that came from connection, from purpose, from love. For the first time in years, he wasn't chasing anything. He was simply present. Grateful. Whole. David Reynolds began as a man who had everything: success, wealth, and status, but none of it filled the quiet emptiness inside him. It wasn't until he noticed joy in the most unexpected place, a pair of homeless children sharing a sandwich, that his heart began to awaken. Through small acts of kindness, genuine conversations, and rediscovered memories, David found something he never knew he was missing: purpose. By giving, not money, but time, care, and compassion, David began to heal the broken parts of himself he'd buried long ago. Helping the children not only changed their lives, it transformed his. Their innocence reminded him of his own lost joy, and their trust reignited the humanity he had forgotten existed within him. In the end, David learned what many spend a lifetime chasing: the real secret of happiness. It's not found in possessions or achievements, but in moments of giving, in acts of love, and in choosing to care when it's easier not to. The joy that had once felt so distant became a part of him again, not because he took more from the world, but because he gave more to it. And through that giving, he found wholeness.